In a world where noise gets attention, calm is often misunderstood. We chase intensity, passion, and sparks, thinking they're the signs of love, when sometimes the most powerful presence is the one that doesn't need to shout to be felt. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't chaotic. She didn't play games. She didn't need to. Her strength was quiet, her love was steady, and in a world full of temporary highs and emotional roller coasters, she was peace, the kind of peace that heals, that softens, that brings a man back to himself. But the thing about peace is, if you don't recognize its value, you take it for granted. And once it's gone, you realize that all the noise in the world can't replace the quiet comfort of someone who truly saw you. She was the calm he didn't understand while he had it. And now, in her absence, that calm is louder than ever. She never needed to raise her voice to be heard. That was part of her magic. She wasn't the loudest in the room or the most demanding. She didn't fill silence with drama or tension. Instead, she brought with her a stillness that made you feel safe in your own skin. It wasn't just in what she said, it was in the way she looked at you, the way she listened, the way she stayed calm when things got messy. She didn't need chaos to feel alive. She didn't need attention to feel worthy. Her self-worth didn't depend on how many compliments she received or how many texts lit up her phone. She had already found a home within herself. That's what made her so rare. Because while everyone else was chasing excitement, she became the excitement. Not through adrenaline or unpredictability, but through presence, through emotional maturity, through the kind of energy that settles your nervous system, not spikes it. In a world that tells women to be more, to be louder, to be flashier, she was unapologetically grounded. She didn't need to outshine anyone. She just stayed true to who she was. And when he met her, he might not have immediately understood what he had in front of him. Because sometimes, when you're used to people who trigger your insecurities or chase validation, calm feels boring. Peace feels unfamiliar. You mistake stability for lack of spark. But it's not that there wasn't fire, it's that the fire didn't burn, it warmed. It was the kind of connection that didn't have to prove itself. The kind that grows stronger the more you sit with it. But if you're not ready for that kind of love, you misread it. You pull away, thinking you'll find something more exciting, something more intense. You look for someone who gives you a rush, not realizing you've just walked away from someone who gave you peace. And eventually, when the high wears off from all the wrong choices, you look back and realize what you had wasn't boring, it was everything you needed. She didn't try to make him stay. That was the other part that caught him off guard. She didn't beg for him to see her. She didn't chase. She didn't lower herself to hold on. Instead, she let go with grace. Because when you know your value, you don't cling to someone who doesn't recognize it. You don't shrink yourself to fit into someone else's confusion. You don't compromise your calm for temporary company. She knew that real love doesn't require you to lose yourself. And so when he walked away, or when he started pulling back, she didn't spiral. She stayed centered. It hurt, of course. She's human. But even in the pain, she held on to her dignity. She didn't try to convince him of her worth. She let time do that. She knew that someday, maybe not today, he'd remember her. He'd missed the softness, the security, the way being around her made the world feel less heavy. And when he did, it wouldn't be because she tried to make him regret it. It would be because the absence of peace is loud. Louder than any argument, louder than any game, louder than any shallow connection he tried to replace her with. Because when you've experienced that kind of calm, nothing else feels quite the same. You start to realize that all the energy you spent looking for something more was actually energy you should have spent appreciating what was already there. You remember how she never tried to control you, how she let you be who you were, but still inspired you to be better. How she didn't flinch when life got hard, how she showed up, not just when it was easy, but when it counted. And the more time passes, the more you realize that what you mistook for simplicity was actually depth. That what you dismissed as predictable was actually stability. That the woman who didn't try to impress you was the one who impressed you the most. She was the calm you didn't understand. And now, no matter how far you go or how many people you meet, you start to understand that kind of calm isn't something you stumble on twice. She loved in a way that didn't ask for attention, it commanded it. Not through drama, not through games, but through the sheer consistency of her presence. You could count on her. When she said something, she meant it. When she showed up, she did so fully. She didn't withhold affection to punish. She didn't weaponize silence. She gave with an open heart, even when it was risky. And for a while, he may have thought that kind of love was always going to be there, that no matter how distracted he became, how inconsistent he was, how little he gave in return, she would still be there, showing up with that same steady warmth. It's easy to take consistency for granted. It's easy to assume someone will stay when they've made you feel that safe. But the thing about a woman who brings peace is that she doesn't stay where she's taken for granted. She didn't fall for him because he dazzled her or swept her off her feet. She fell for who he was at his core, the version of him he didn't even fully believe in yet. She saw the potential, not because she was delusional, but because she believed in growth. She thought love was a place where both people evolved together, and she was willing to do that work, to be patient, to build something meaningful. But what she didn't do was chase. She didn't beg him to meet her halfway. She didn't justify disrespect or excuse emotional unavailability. She might have waited, she might have hoped, but eventually she chose herself, and that's when it hit him. Not all at once. Regret doesn't always scream. It creeps in slowly through quiet moments when he realizes how alone he feels. Through new relationships that look exciting but lack depth. Through conversations that don't land the same way. He starts to remember what it was like to talk to someone who really listened. To sit next to someone and feel understood without saying a word. She didn't just love him, she knew him. She noticed the small things. The way his voice changed when he was lying to himself. The way he withdrew when he felt unworthy. The subtle cues he gave off when he needed support but didn't know how to ask for it. She saw it all, and instead of judging, she accepted him. But acceptance isn't the same as settling, and when he pushed her too far, when he became too inconsistent, when he treated her presence as a given, she stopped explaining and walked away. Not out of spite, not out of anger, but because she finally realized that the same love she gave to him, she needed to give to herself. She was tired of pouring into someone who didn't want to fill their own cup. And it wasn't until her energy was gone that he felt the true weight of it. He wasn't just missing a person, he was missing a piece that anchored him, a stability that allowed him to be vulnerable, a softness that reminded him of his own goodness. The silence she left behind was deafening, because there was no big fight, no messy ending, just a quiet decision to stop showing up where she wasn't valued. And that kind of exit leaves a mark. It haunts you, because you don't get the satisfaction of closure. You don't get the chance to say, wait, I get it now, I'll do better. She's already gone, already building a life that feels lighter without the weight of trying to prove her worth. She's laughing more, glowing more, at peace in a way that makes her even more magnetic. And now he sees her from a distance, realizing too late that what he thought was ordinary was actually extraordinary, that the way she loved wasn't weak, it was strong, unshakable, rare. And he let it slip through his fingers because he didn't recognize the value of what doesn't scream for attention. He'll go on pretending he's fine, telling himself it just wasn't the right time or that they wanted different things. But deep down he knows the truth. He didn't lose her because she was too much. He lost her because he gave too little. And now he's left, searching for that same peace in places that only offer noise. He'll miss her calm in the chaos, her patience in his confusion, her loyalty when he didn't even deserve it. And the hardest part? Knowing she still exists, just not for him. She didn't just bring peace, she became his mirror. The kind of mirror that doesn't flatter or distort, but reflects you back to yourself in the most honest way possible. When he was with her, he couldn't hide behind charm or bravado. She saw through all of it. Not to tear him down, but to invite him to show up more honestly. She didn't care about the curated version of him, the one he used to impress others. She was drawn to the man underneath, the vulnerable one, the one with dreams he was scared to speak aloud, the one with wounds he hadn't made peace with. And because she held space for that version of him, he started to feel safe. Not just emotionally safe, but deeply understood in a way he hadn't experienced before. That safety is intoxicating. It disarms you. It makes you want to be better. Not for her, but because she reminds you that a better version of you is possible. But the same mirror that reflects love also reflects lack. Over time, instead of stepping into his growth, he avoided it. Her depth started to intimidate him. Not because she demanded too much, but because she demanded realness. And being real meant confronting things he wasn't ready to face. His fear of commitment, his need for external validation, his habit of self-sabotage whenever he felt too close to something good. Instead of rising to the occasion, he started retreating. He began creating distance, sometimes through detachment, sometimes through defensiveness, often through silence. And she felt it. She always felt it. But she didn't chase. She leaned back, giving him space to come forward, hoping he would choose the connection instead of his patterns, hoping he would do the work, not just for her, but for himself. And that's the thing about women like her. She won't force it. She won't beg for presence, for effort, for growth. She believes love should be given freely, not pulled out of someone like a reluctant confession. So she waited, not passively but with dignity, until it became clear that he wasn't coming closer. He was drifting. And she made the quiet, heartbreaking decision to leave, not with a dramatic exit, not with accusations, just with grace. She didn't need to burn the bridge. She simply stopped crossing it. Because she realized that loving someone shouldn't come at the cost of losing yourself. After she left, something changed in him. At first, it was easy to pretend it didn't matter, that she was just another person in a long list of relationships that didn't work out. But that story didn't hold, because she wasn't just another woman. She was the one who saw the parts of him no one else had ever cared enough to look at. And her absence wasn't just quiet, it was echoing. He didn't miss her because he was lonely. He missed her because he finally saw what she had been holding up for him all along, the version of himself he had the potential to become. Without her, he lost more than a relationship. He lost the mirror that made him honest, the peace that made him feel safe, the connection that required him to stop performing and just be real. And the hardest part was knowing he couldn't get it back, not because she was cruel, but because once she sees that someone would rather stay broken than grow, she doesn't try to fix them. She lets them go. She doesn't waste time convincing someone to meet her at the level she already stands at. And that's when regret hits hardest. Not when someone leaves with chaos, but when they leave with peace. When they don't try to make you feel bad. When they don't air out your flaws or remind you of all the chances you missed. When they simply walk away with quiet strength, taking their calm with them. He'll keep chasing that version of himself she once believed in. He'll hear her voice in the back of his mind when he starts to spiral. He'll remember how she looked at him, not for who he was, but for who he could be. And he'll realize too late that she wasn't trying to change him. She was trying to love him into becoming the man he always said he wanted to be. But growth is a choice. And when you delay it long enough, love leaves. And when love, that pure, walks away, it doesn't come back to remind you of what you lost. It lets the silence do that for you. She never needed to raise her voice to make a point. Her silence said more than his longest rants ever could. While he relied on noise, arguments, distractions, games, she relied on stillness. The kind of stillness that forces you to sit with yourself, to actually hear your own thoughts, to face the parts of you that you've spent your whole life running from. And that was her greatest power. She didn't chase, she didn't beg, she didn't try to match his chaos, she just stood still. And in that stillness, she held a mirror up to him. Not the kind that flatters or softens the truth, but the kind that makes you see exactly where you've been hiding. She didn't come into his life to create drama, she came to offer peace. A place where he could exhale, drop the mask, stop performing. But when you've lived your whole life equating love with intensity, fights, highs, lows, adrenaline, peace feels foreign. It feels boring. You start looking for something to disrupt it, to test it. And that's what he did. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know what to do with someone who didn't need to be saved, who didn't require chaos to feel alive. He poked at her boundaries, played with her patience, confused her consistency for weakness. But what he didn't realize is that her calm wasn't passivity. It was power. in its most disarming form. She knew exactly what she brought to the table. She knew her presence was healing. She also knew that not everyone is ready to be healed. Some people would rather live in dysfunction because it's familiar, even if it's painful, and he was one of them. So when he started pulling away, testing limits, throwing emotional curveballs, she didn't respond with desperation. She responded with distance, not as a tactic, but as a form of self-protection, because she had learned, probably the hard way, that sometimes love isn't enough to fix someone, especially when they haven't decided to fix themselves. He tried to get a reaction, a jealous look, a panicked message, a last-ditch effort to win him back, but instead he got silence. The kind that isn't empty but full of meaning. She didn't scream that she was done, she just was. And that's when it hit him, not all at once, but slowly, like a fog lifting. He realized she wasn't going to chase him, that the door wasn't slammed, but it also wasn't cracked open anymore. And something about that undid him. Because he was used to women who needed him, who fought to prove their worth, who made his approval their prize. But she wasn't one of them. She was whole before he met her, and she would remain whole after he left. He didn't just lose a relationship, he lost access to a sanctuary. A space where he was seen, not just for his potential, but for his patterns. A space where growth was possible if he'd been willing to meet her there, but he wasn't. So she let go, not with bitterness, but with grace. And that grace stung more than any angry exit ever could, because you can rationalize someone walking away in rage, but you can't rationalize someone walking away in peace. That kind of departure forces you to ask the harder question. What did I do or fail to do to lose something so steady? Over time, he'll meet others. Some will be exciting, some chaotic, some fun, but none of them will have her silence. None of them will challenge him with their stillness. None of them will make him feel so exposed just by being present, because that kind of calm is rare. It doesn't demand attention, it commands it. It doesn't scream to be valued, it walks away when it's not. And by the time he's ready to be the man she believed he could be, she'll be long gone. Not out of cruelty, but because she doesn't stay where she's outgrown. She doesn't cling to potential. She gives chances, yes, but only to those who rise to meet them. And when they don't, she doesn't punish them. She just removes herself from the narrative entirely. That's the kind of loss that lingers. Not because she made herself unforgettable, but because she reminded him of what he could have had. Peace, depth, clarity. If he had only been willing to stop running, but instead he ran from her, only to find that what he was really running from was the very thing he needed most. And once that realization sets in, it doesn't let go, because he'll look for her in every calm moment, in every quiet heart, and never find it. Because she wasn't just a person, she was a mirror. She was the stillness that demanded he face himself. And he turned away. She gave him the kind of loyalty that doesn't ask for constant validation, the kind of love that shows up in the quietest moments, the small messages to check in, the thoughtful gestures, the space she held for him when he was off balance. She was consistent, even when he wasn't. She stayed soft, even when he brought tension. And the truth is, he mistook her steadiness for something that would always be there, no matter how many times he drifted. But there's a limit, even for someone with a heart as wide as hers. There's a moment where giving turns into depletion, and when it came, she didn't explode. She just stopped offering parts of herself to someone who didn't know how to protect them. What breaks a man most isn't the loss of a woman's body. It's the absence of her emotional presence. That warm light that always made space for his flaws, that held belief in him even when he couldn't quite believe in himself. When she left, he didn't just lose a girlfriend, he lost his emotional home. And that kind of void doesn't get filled easily. He thought she was always going to be there because she was always there. Till one day, she wasn't. Until one day, her replies were short, her attention wasn't free anymore, her energy stopped flowing in his direction like it used to, not because she stopped loving him, but because she started loving herself more. And that subtle shift changed everything. He remembers the way she made things easier, not through grand gestures, but through presence, through emotional intelligence, through intuition. She could sense when he was distant and gently pulled him back without pressure. She could feel when he was struggling and gave him the kind of comfort that didn't smother. He didn't have to perform around her, he just had to show up. And yet, he started pulling away, testing how far he could go before she'd break. He confused her calm for indifference. He assumed her forgiveness was weakness, but it wasn't. It was patience. And patience has limits. The woman who gives you peace is rarely loud about her leaving. She doesn't write paragraphs explaining her worth. She doesn't need to. She knows what she brings. And she knows when it's not being appreciated. So when he pushed one too many times, she made the quietest yet most powerful decision of all. She withdrew, not with anger but with grace, not to manipulate but to protect her peace. And that's when it hit him. Not while she was still there trying, not while she was still reaching out, but in the silence that followed her exit. That silence was louder than any fight they ever had. It was filled with everything he never said, everything she waited for, and everything he took for granted. She didn't leave to make a point. She left because he'd made his, over and over again, through his absence, through his dismissiveness, through his inability to match the emotional depth she offered freely. And the cost of that is something he's still calculating, because peace isn't just something you feel, it's something you remember. And now that she's gone, he feels the noise of everything she protected him from, the emotional clutter she used to sort for him, the storms she used to quiet without asking for anything in return. Now, he's left with his own mind, and it's loud without her. There's a unique kind of power in a woman who can give you peace and then walk away when that peace is no longer being honored. She doesn't need to be dramatic. Her absence says it all. And it's that absence that follows him into every future relationship. Because once you've experienced someone who makes you feel safe, understood, and seen, every surface-level connection after that feels hollow. He can go out, he can meet other people, he can fill his time with distractions, but none of it replaces her. None of it touches the depth she did. None of it quiets his soul like she could with just a look or a word. And that's what haunts him, not what they had, but what he lost. Because he didn't just lose her, he lost the version of himself that he only ever became around her. The softer version, the one that didn't have to be guarded, the one that could be vulnerable without fear. And now, every time he tries to connect with someone else, he's reminded of how rare that space truly was. She didn't just love him, she understood him. And he'll spend a long time trying to find that again, only to realize that the woman who gave him peace isn't looking back, because she gave him every chance to rise. He just didn't believe she'd ever stop waiting, until she did. She didn't try to change him. She didn't nag, beg, or twist herself into someone else just to be enough. She loved him exactly as he was, and perhaps even more powerfully, she saw him for who he could be. But that's where the heartbreak quietly crept in. Because while she saw the potential, he stayed comfortable in his patterns. He stayed in the safe zone, refusing to evolve, refusing to meet her in the depth of emotional maturity she was offering on a silver platter. And what he didn't realize then was that her calm wasn't passive. It was purposeful. It wasn't because she didn't care or didn't have standards. It was because she was holding space for him to grow without force. But eventually the waiting became heavy. Eventually her patience turned into quiet resignation, because even peace has a boundary. The thing about a woman who brings peace is that she never demands transformation. She simply creates a space where transformation becomes possible. But for it to happen, the other person has to step into that space willingly. He didn't. He mistook her steadiness for complacency. He thought he had time. He thought that as long as she was still showing up, still giving, still understanding, it meant she would always be there. He underestimated what it means to be with a woman who leads with calm but lives with fire. A woman who chooses peace over chaos, not because she's incapable of confrontation, but because she's mastered the art of protecting her soul. He regrets it now, not just because she's gone, but because he knows deep down that she waited. She waited longer than she should have. She gave him time to catch up emotionally. She gave him room to figure himself out. She offered unconditional support in moments where most would have walked. And instead of rising to meet her, he stayed rooted in fear. Fear of commitment, fear of change, fear of being seen too clearly. But that's what she did. She saw him. And when someone sees you that deeply, you either embrace it or run from it. He ran, not physically at first, but emotionally. He pulled back. He got distracted. He stopped showing up with the same presence she gave so effortlessly. And even then, she didn't walk. But hope without action is a quiet form of heartbreak. And she finally reached the moment when she realized that waiting any longer would mean betraying herself. So she left, softly, silently, not to teach him a lesson, but to reclaim the parts of herself that had been stretched too thin in the name of love. And now, from a distance, he feels the magnitude of what he lost. Not because she was loud in her exit, but because her absence echoes louder than any goodbye ever could. He lost the only woman who made emotional safety feel effortless, who never judged his shadows, who nurtured his growth without trying to control it. And that loss cuts deeper than he expected, because now he's surrounded by noise, empty conversations, shallow affection, surface-level connections, and all he can think about is how none of it feels like her. She was the rare kind of woman who didn't need to dominate the room to change its energy. Her presence alone was grounding. She didn't need to prove herself because she was the proof of kindness, of strength, of emotional depth. And when she loved, it was never with conditions. It was always with intention. But what he realizes, too late, is that loving someone with calm doesn't mean you'll always wait. It doesn't mean you'll tolerate emotional laziness forever. It means you're offering the best of yourself in hopes that it will be met, matched, and reciprocated. And when it's not, you don't explode, you evolve. You let go, not out of anger, but out of clarity. And there's nothing more powerful than a woman who walks away in peace. Now, every relationship he stumbles into feels like an echo of what he once had. Nothing is quite as grounded. No one quite gets him the same way. And even if he tries to reach out again, he knows she won't come back. Not because she doesn't love him anymore, but because she finally loves herself enough to never return to what made her question her worth in the first place. He thought peace meant permanence, but what he learned, far too late, is that peace is a gift, not a guarantee. And if you mishandle it, you lose the rarest kind of love there is, the kind that doesn't need to be loud to be unforgettable, the kind that never begs to be seen, because its very existence leaves an imprint on your soul. In the end, she was the calm he'll never find again, because she embodied a rare strength, the strength to love deeply without losing herself, to hold space without controlling it, and to choose peace even when it meant walking away. Her calm wasn't weakness, it was power wrapped in grace, a steady light he took for granted until it was gone. And now, as he faces the emptiness she left behind, he realizes that some people don't just come into your life to stay, they come to teach you what true peace feels like. The question is, will he learn from what he lost, or will he spend forever chasing something he once had but never fully appreciated? Because some calm isn't meant to be chased. It's meant to be honored, respected, and treasured. And when it's gone, all that's left is regret.